Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made.
And I'm Ross, creative director at Epic Made. And we're the hosts of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Greg Walter of Too Tall, Brandy Grace Wong of Totally Branded, and Matt Vojak of Made by Things.
We're forever grateful for the supporters of our podcast, and we're always looking for more sponsors. That said, Pixel Retentive is brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a team of strategists and artists who excel in visual storytelling. Our studio crafts unforgettable animation and illustration that not only captivates your audience, but also drives tangible business results. We specialize in engaging imaginative pop culture savvy audiences with beloved clients like Nickelodeon, WWE, and Sci-Fi. Visit getepicmade.com and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign.
So with us today, we have Sebastian Lopez. Sebastian is a creative entrepreneur, digital nomad, and co-founder of Awake Abroad Media, a content marketing agency dedicated to helping realtors and entrepreneurs grow their audience, personal brands, and revenue on social media. Born in Mexico City and raised in Toronto, he's lived in 12 different cities worldwide, amassing a diverse professional and cultural background. His experience as a photographer and videographer includes work with major brands like Uber, Intel, and Dropbox. Welcome, Sebastian. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carl and Ross. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Excited to have you. So before we jump into the topic today, we always like to ask a little prelim question, let our audience get to know you a little bit better. So tell us how long you've been in the industry and the project you're most proud of so far.
Okay. I've been in media creation since high school. Professionally, though, I was around 25 years old when I stepped into my first multimedia producer role. And then I only lasted a year as a full-time employee, and then since then as an entrepreneur. So it's been 7 years of doing this. The project that I'm most proud of would be shooting for Uber in Mexico City. For me, that was just a dream client and a really amazing experience. One of those goals you set for yourself, and they kind of just happened. They happen when they happen. So, yeah, I'm really proud of that project.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I know when we started working with like name brand clients, like people that, everybody knows, it just feels really good, So I can definitely relate to that. So awesome. Let's see. So today's subject, we're talking about discussing social media and content marketing as it relates to personal branding, sustainable content workflows, and content creation. You want to take it from the top on some of your philosophies or thoughts on that?
Oh man, where to start? But yeah. So just for some context, I used to run a real estate marketing company in Vancouver prior to me moving to Mexico, where I am now. And I was working a lot with realtors, creating content for the listing videos and stuff like that. And I started to notice that there was this big gap in the market of real estate professionals not building their personal brand, not creating value content that extends beyond showing their newest listing. And that opportunity is something that I jumped on eventually, once my wife, Jasmina, and I started Awake Abroad Media. And so we help entrepreneurs grow their audience, brand, and revenue and create sustainable content workflows, which is, I think, one of the biggest pain points that a lot of entrepreneurs face with creating content and showing up online is not having sustainability and not having a workflow that can cater to an ongoing relationship with their audience.
Gotcha. So when you say sustainability, you're saying like, this is a sustainable practice that someone can continue to do and it doesn't burn them out. They don't like run out of ideas or like not be able to continue to produce it. Cause we all know making 1 or 2 or 5 pieces of content does nothing, right? Like,
It's treating it like a marathon and not a sprint. I've sorry, my son's in the background and it's, I'm sorry if you can hear him. He's losing his mind.
Okay. Ross is a new father, all the joys.
Congrats.
Thank you. Sorry, I've just been a little distracted over the past 30 seconds. So yeah, the idea being that I got into social media around 2020. Like, I actually didn't have a social media account or any social media presence professionally prior to 2020, even personally, really. And so I had the advantage of getting in social media, knowing how like exhausting it was and kind of toxic it was.
Yeah.
And
You went right for Twitter too, which is like the worst one in the toxicity.
And I went into it, and I definitely underestimated how much energy it steals from you, right? Like, even knowing that I was kind of just doing it semi-casually, right? I was doing it in 2020 to kind of insulate myself just in case the worst happened with COVID. But I realized at that point I just kind of needed a presence online in general so that I could, better support the community and so on and so forth. And yeah, man, it takes so much out of you if you don't have a plan.
Yeah.
Like, it's significantly more difficult than you would think to just produce content constantly, because you really do get kind of sucked into the rat race. You start realizing that if you don't produce faster and faster and faster and faster, then the algorithm kind of leaves you behind, whether that's true or not, and it kind of like incentivizes you to burn out much faster.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs will start with the good intention of building a brand, putting content out there, but then when it gets to actually creating content, they hit this massive block of, what do I talk about? Imposter syndrome. Who am I to talk about something? And then you create a piece of content, and then you kind of realize that you have another, 1,000 pieces of content to go. So I like to remind myself and everyone that, like, you're only at 1% of all the content you'll create in your entire lifetime. So lessening the value that we attribute to every one piece of content and focusing on our entire body of work as a whole, that's really where the approach and where the energy should go to. So it's okay to not be perfect, but rather focus on, I have like the 70-30% rule. So
Okay.
I try to get my content to 70% because that last 30% often takes 10 times more to do, but it doesn't actually lead to 10 times more results.
Right.
Yeah.
So that keeps things really sustainable.
Yeah, no, I love that. We operate in a similar mentality in terms of things that are like, look, if this is a big ass project for a big client, like, we're going all the way in. But like, if we're creating content for ourselves, same thing. Just knowing that most of this stuff is kind of disposable. It's really the big narrative, right? Like, are you positioning yourself in a certain way and having a voice and speaking to a mission or goal, kind of getting, and it surprises me dramatically at this point that, like, real estate agents weren't doing this for the longest time. Like, but I guess it's crazy. Like, you think, I'm sure there's a lot of it. It's like, well, I got my face on this sign and I got my face on this business card and I've got a brand. Like, it is not at all. So, yeah.
Well, see, I think a lot of people get stuck on the visual identity. So, I have a logo, I have good photos, I have good videos, and therefore that's the brand. But when it comes to like the messaging and the mission and the purpose, they lack it. So it makes it really hard for them to show up online and actually share value.
Yeah.
And that's really the brand strategy alongside with the brand identity is like the backbone of any content that you put out on social media, right? That's what reinforces your pillars, the topics that you always reinforce and talk about. And it's what makes your audience actually get to know and understand you as having a clear identity. It's not actually the logo or the colors. Those things just reflect the inner workings of that strategy.
Yeah, they're there as symbols, right? Like, they're there to create an emotion. They're an emotional handshake for the conversation. But if you walk up to someone, shake their hand, and just stare at them, ultimately you're not getting their business.
Yeah, exactly.
You could be dressed to the nines, you could look the part, you could have 100% confidence in your outward sort of persona, and if you don't actually commit to saying anything, then it's going to be really hard to get the business.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I've recently heard this. I've been struggling to get back into social media, so I'm excited to have you on the podcast. Carl's been doing great with it for a long time, actually. I struggle with the perfectionism thing. And I heard this recently that kind of I haven't quite activated it yet, but it's kind of restructured the way that I think about it. I heard another artist say, treat social media like your sketchbook, not your portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I like that.
And it really helped reframe how I thought about it, right? Because you typically want your best foot forward, right? Like I think that a lot of, especially artists, or any business professional, they treat social media like, oh, I can't look vulnerable here because this is my outward appearance, right? But I think everyone understands that social media is disposable content at this point, and I think that people creating it, the creators, underestimate how much of it is actually digested by their audience, and so they're killing themselves over, a 10% return, when in reality, I know creators who have created something 3-4 years ago that kind of popped off, a long while after they made it, just because they kept feeding the machine, and eventually someone found that video instead of the video they just made.
Yeah, for sure. It's I think it's really important to just look at the overall work that you're doing, and also to share. It's really important to share the struggles and the hardships as much as it is the success. So I actually really like, and I agree with what you proposed here of treating it as a sketchbook rather than your portfolio, because it's hard to relate to someone that's only constantly sharing their wins, and it's a lot easier to relate to someone that meets you where your struggles and your hardships come in, which is the reality of every human being, right? Especially on social media. So when you look at marketing and really looking at desire and fear and how we can help people cross that through our products and services, then we want to relate to those things as well. And the only way to relate to that is by being vulnerable and showing the behind the scenes, showing the failure, showing the hardships, because then people want to be a part of that. They get invested.
Yeah, I think, something I've noticed, I started this company in 2006, right? Like I've been doing this my whole adult life. And people no longer want to do, and this has been this way for, I'd say, at least a decade, but it's really prevalent now. It's like people aren't interested in doing business with like a brand, right? Like they really want to know who's behind that brand. Even on the bigger brands, like I see like multinational, pretty decent size like gaming companies that like sell computers and stuff, and their social media marketing manager is the face of their brand on the internet, making videos, having fun doing it. Like people think he's the owner because he's making all the content, and it's like literally like it's a multi-million-dollar giant company, but like they're treating it like a small business, and they're having a lot of success with that because here's this gamer guy that's making computers and making all these videos and all that, and it's very relatable. No one really gives a shit about the brand name. Like they're having fun interacting with this human being on the internet that's making relatable gamer culture videos for the people they're serving, right? So I think that's huge, and that's something I've tried to do, is just keep making content for myself.
Yeah, I think like there has never been such a better time, or a better time. There's never been a better time for entrepreneurs to build a brand for themselves, where traditionally, to borrow from what you're saying, is like corporations were the end all be all back in the day. You'd want to work with them, but a corporation is the embodiment of human characteristics and attributes that make a big business relatable to an individual human being. But with social media, we can actually just use our own interests, our own characteristics to communicate directly to people without pointing it at some larger entity or corporation body of work. So our names alone are sufficient enough to build relationships with people online just as they are offline.
Agreed.
It's pretty powerful.
I got to I have to go help my son real quick. Just keep going. I got this. It's just the reality of early.
Hey man, that stay-at-home entrepreneur life, bro. You gotta deal with the baby sometimes.
I appreciate. If for whatever reason I don't happen to come back, Sebastian, I very much enjoyed talking to you, and I'm sure we'll talk again.
Yeah, of course.
I'm really sorry, guys.
Good luck. Hope to see you soon.
See you later. Cool, man. Yeah. So we lost Ross. That's the first time this has happened in an episode, though. So he's been doing great. So
it's a new baby,
Yeah. So. But hey, look, this is all the stuff we're just talking about right now. Like, I'm not going to cut this out of the episode because this is real ass content. And people that follow my podcast know that Ross was gone for 2 months and he was out on paternity leave, and then he got back and things were crazy. And this is life, right? Like we work these jobs and do these things so that we can have a nice life. We shouldn't be trying to pretend like we live to work. Like that's not our whole purpose in life. So I love this kind of stuff. Like this is real life, this is how it goes.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Cool. So what are some of like your favorite content stories? Like some people you think are really doing it right, or maybe some clients you worked with where it's like, we came up with this idea to do this content this way, and it was just really awesome. Like, you have anything like that comes to mind?
Well, clients right now, working with a realtor in Calgary. He's a top producer for Remax and one of the top realtors in Vancouver, really moving a lot of volume. The really cool thing about working with him, funny enough, during our initial calls before onboarding him, he was like, Seb, I think I'm your ideal client, aren't I? And I was like, you totally are our ideal client. And this is why, because I consider him to be a creative realtor. So he's someone that, he's focused on real estate and helping people. He's all about the community. But there's this creative side to him where he wants to share the story. He wants to bring people. He wants to create content. And that's where a relationship really thrives. It's the fact that he's comfortable getting in front of the camera. He gets it. He gets that it's going to be hard or awkward or time consuming, but he knows the value of how content is a time and trust accelerator. And because of that, it just allows for some really cool, genuine stories to actually pop off on social media, right? We post across all platforms. So you have different audiences on different platforms who the content speaks to differently. So whether it's a personal story or a behind the scenes or a value piece content, it's really cool to see how that really unfolds when the mentality of the realtor or the entrepreneur is aligned with also being creative and wanting to add their own touch to things as well. It makes for some really interesting content.
Yeah, right. And that's what we want. Nobody wants cookie cutter, bland things, people producing things. Like, I think this is what people want to see. It's like, they want to see the human being behind the thing, right? It's that simple. Like, there's not, and some people are boring and everyone's got their own unique little thing too, I think. Something you said there that I was curious about. So let's say like, you produce this one larger format piece of content. Do you then go like, hey, we should cut this up and you talk about it this way on LinkedIn, but talk about it this way on TikTok and talk about it this way on Instagram, and all different variations of that same kind of body of particular piece of content? Or what's your approach on that front?
Oh, that's a great question. So what we do is we follow a structure to all the content that we put out, whether it's for ourselves or for our clients. And that is, in the simplest form, it's hook, value, and call to action. And we can elaborate a little bit more, but as long as the piece of content has a hook that we deliver on throughout the content, it doesn't really matter what platform it goes onto. There are some common practices for, say, TikTok over Instagram or YouTube Shorts. Some platforms cater more to raw, authentic content over highly edited content. But in order to be efficient, we can't be recreating the exact same piece of content in different ways for different platforms.
Okay.
At least not just to stay on top of it. What we do instead is, say we create a long form piece of content. Here's an example actually from a CEO that we're working with in Canada to create content for his brand and company. We created 5 YouTube videos and 15 shorts that are going to be going to all platforms. The way that we did that is that we have the core piece of value in the long form videos, And then afterwards, we strategically recorded intentional hooks that we kind of pre-scripted will be matching up with certain value from the YouTube videos. So when we get to the editing room, we have the 5 YouTube videos, but we have shorts out of each video, but there's already a hook recorded that's related to that short, and we already know what that piece of content is going to be. So it's by planning ahead of time, then deconstructing the process, that you can actually make it so long-form content can actually smoothly work with short-form content without it feeling like it's just an excerpt from a video that you're peeping into and it's not really grabbing your attention at first sight.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds really intelligent. But I take it you see great metrics with that. Like, I'm sure the numbers prove that works, right?
Yeah, definitely. And another way to go about it, say that this podcast gets cut up into shorts,
Yep,
is putting a text hook on the screen. Because even if you or I don't say a verbal hook, putting a little piece of text for the first 2 or 3 seconds that says, either desire or pain point based, how to do this, or the biggest mistake that entrepreneurs make is, or something like that, can at least hook the audience to listen to what the conversation is saying thereafter. So those little strategies we use to leverage the long form for the short form.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I love it. So something in your bio that piqued my interest that I wrote down here is that you've lived in 12 cities across the world, and that you have like a diverse cultural understanding and background having done that. Like, how does that play into some of your social media approaches, or does it not?
Oh, it definitely does. So I studied communications at University of Toronto.
Okay.
And I learned very early on that communication is a big part of it is connecting over culture. So
100%.
The more that we open up our minds and our experience with different cultural perspectives, especially in such a multicultural world with globalism that we have now, like I grew up in Canada and there's people from all walks of life, from all countries there. The more you get to understand people's perspectives, the better marketer you become, because you get to understand human psychology beyond the limitations of where you were raised and what you know. There's this quote by Pink Floyd that I love. It's all you touch and all you see is all your life will ever be. And so I kind of took that to heart when I graduated university, and I was like, I feel like this stance, I did a mushroom trip at the time when this happened. I just had this thought. I was like, I can't be living in Toronto my whole life. I can't graduate and just go straight to a 9-to-5. Like, that's not what life is about for me. So I think I owe it to myself to get to know this world, and whatever knowledge and experience I get, I can then relay to whoever I end up working with in the future. And I think that's one of my unique advantages, is just kind of understanding how different people talk and use emotion and storytelling to be able to communicate those messages right back to them.
That's beautiful, man. I love that. A great quote as well. I wrote that down. All you touch and all you see is all you will ever be. Pink.
All your life will ever be. Yeah.
All your life. Oh, yeah. I love that.
That's from Dark Side of the Moon.
Got it. Cool. I love it, dude.
Yeah, it's great. So my wife, Jasmina, she's my business partner, the other half of Awake Abroad Media, and she also loves to travel. We've actually been to the same amount of countries, but different countries. Okay. And it's funny because we have the same experience and the same mindset when it comes to this as well. I think that's why we got along so well when we first met, is that we're just trying to bring all the different cultural experiences to what we do.
That's pretty cool. So where is these 12 cities? What are these 12 cities? I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so...
Or just rattle off the big ones. I know it would be hard to actually get all the...
Yeah, big ones. So it'd be Vancouver, Toronto. I lived in Banff, just north of Calgary, Alberta. I lived in Adelaide, Australia, South Australia, Brisbane, the Gold Coast, Cairns, Australia, north. I lived in Manchester, UK. I'm currently in Puerto Vallarta.
Where's that?
Puerto Vallarta is west coast of Mexico, so
okay.
under Baja California.
Oh, cool.
You keep going down, you'll get to this little beach town.
Amazing. Amazing. I went to Jamaica once, and my memories are fuzzy after that, but it was a good time.
Yeah, Puerto Vallarta is really beautiful, really beautiful. I do recommend checking it out during a trip
Dude,
sometime.
yeah, yeah. I have to travel more. So I wholly resonate with everything you just said about that cultural experience. A lot of my cultural experience has been online and online creative communities and and video games, honestly. Like I spent,
Mm.
so much time as a kid dialing into my 56K dial up, like connecting with people all over the world playing video games. And now my son does that too in VR, which is crazy. But I haven't traveled as much as I'd like to. Like I love traveling. Like we just went to Yellowstone a couple weeks ago, and
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
we go to Outer Banks in North Carolina, and
Oh yeah.
been to Jamaica and stuff, but like never really leave the country. That's definitely on the list. So like I speak English and like really terrible Spanish, and I can curse in Greek, but that's just from like family functions growing up. So that's what I got.
Oh, that's awesome. So, what kind of video games do you play? Like, what's your experience also in those communities online?
Yeah, I mean, so online growing up, I played a lot of EverQuest, EverQuest 2. Then I played all the Blizzard games as they came out. Like I was playing Diablo 4 a little bit. It's not like quite connecting with me like it used to when I was a kid. Like I bought it almost like purely for nostalgia, and like it just feels really redundant. I don't know. And apparently the in-game content's a little better, but now like my time and efforts are like spent a lot in like Web3 communities and building out those spaces and working in like NFT and blockchain projects, which are really fun, and how those are intersecting with gaming, and how people can like develop their own ownership over this content that they create, or the things that they acquire inside of these video games. Like that's like the digital ownership economy is still bubbling up under the surface. I know like if people aren't in the space, they thought like, oh, it boomed and like no one cares anymore, but the people in the space are really die hard still. And I think there's a lot that going into like your industry specifically where you get into this content creation for social, that like there's platforms out there right now where like when you create a piece of content, it becomes an NFT. And as people riff off of that and do different things, like it's all referencing the original NFT, and they can track metrics a lot better, and share creator royalties a lot better too, and have a whole lot better compensation methods, where there isn't just like, oh, well, YouTube says, you had this much ad. Like it's actually, public transparent information, which is really powerful, and it's empowering the communities. A lot of these are built in decentralized communities as well, where it's like, it's not just one central authority. It's all run on a DAO where people have, ownership based on, however, like you buy into it. Usually it's either through content creation or buying NFTs or buying crypto. I get into the weeds of all that, but like, it's fascinating stuff to me, and I love watching it evolve, because I think the future, the Web3 future, is really more about like, how do we make sure, that what happened in Web2, where there's a few small companies that gobble up 95% of all the revenue and all the market share and all the value, while we're putting in like a disparate, let's say 80% of the value of the platform is the user generated content. Maybe the user should make closer to 80% of the value. Like, what do I know? Right. So, but that's the future. That's the Web3 space, like just the mindset behind it. So that's what I see.
It's revolutionary. It's crazy. And in a great way, because I agree with you. I feel like the creators should have ownership over their intellectual property. And at the end of the day, it's the users that are building the platforms. Without the users, there's no success on any of these platforms.
100%.
Yeah,
it's exciting to see where that'll go. And then obviously in the video game community, that's happening now as well, right? You think about in a space like, the CEO of Epic Games at Fortnite, the last I heard, he's not for Web3 or NFTs at all, but think about like you're a kid, you've been playing Fortnite for 10 years or what, your childhood, and you've acquired all these dope skins because Fortnite's made all these crazy licensing deals with every brand on the planet, which is so impressive. But like, if those skins are assets and NFTs and you can transfer those around now, you can actually be making money off of like, well, I got this rare Batman skin from like, 2018 when they did this special release. Like, what is that worth in a marketplace where maybe there's only like 15 of them left on some, or how, I don't know, whatever it is, the number, but Like there's just that kind of stuff is really cool because it gives people this real ownership and a real buy-in to these platforms and these places where these assets are created. So
Yeah. One thing that we're seeing on Instagram, for example, that, to an extent, it kind of borrows from this is that when you repost, say that you post a video with a song posted originally by somebody else.
right.
The platform and the algorithm can now detect whose song that belongs to, and it'll actually attribute the original author, which I find is really cool. Yeah. It's super
That's really
cool.
nice. Yeah.
Because you went from like, somebody makes a video and maybe they rip the song MP3. It just used to just say original audio on the platform. But now we'll actually link it back to the original artist. So the artist is getting more credit for producing that song or creating that video. And that actually really helps them grow. And I think that's really cool because I think artists need to get more recognition for their work. And there's some creators out there that are creating this constant viral trending music and sounds for social media. And they are basically the leaders of that kind of space. And they kind of create these trends with their music.
I didn't realize it was like an auto tagging thing. So like even if someone goes, hey, I'm going to scrape this audio off of this thing, download it to my computer, attach it to my piece of content, not even on Instagram's platform or Facebook, and then upload it, they'll read it and then run it through their database and then attribute it back. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's fucking fantastic.
Yeah. You'll notice some things though, if you like maybe change the pitch or you remix the song, then I'll upload it maybe as an original.
Sure.
But yeah, if you're just using a straight rip, like I don't know, a song by Thunderstruck by AC/DC or something, it will say Thunderstruck by AC/DC after, for sure.
Awesome. Well, you clearly have good taste in music as well. With your Pink Floyd lyrics and your AC/DC. Some classic rock. I love it.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Let's see. I had another question bubbling up in there. How do you feel about like some of these AI tools that people can utilize now to create content? Have you seen any success with them? Have you seen any of them? I mean, obviously, like it's never as good yet, but it might be soon, and it's better than nothing, right? Like I use an AI tool to take and create shorts because no one else on my team nor myself has the time to make shorts from some of my other content. So we run it through there, scrape some shorts out. Could they be better? Yes. Is it 70%? Probably. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's such a controversial question because I'm. You could probably guess from Awake Abroad Media. My wife and I have a certain perspective of the world. The reason why we're in Mexico, and one of the things that concerns me about artificial intelligence is how much us, humanity, are going to allow it to take over roles and jobs and the things that humans have the ability to do. But there's also like a balance between that because you can use AI for sustainability so you can focus your creative power to other things. So very much like creating the shorts, there's two sides to that. A human's going to be able to edit the shorts better than AI is, but AI is going to allow you to create shorts versus not creating shorts. At least it can bridge the gap for a period of time until maybe a person can take that over, or it could be a really good starting point for that piece of content to just be finessed after the fact. So I'm all for AI when it comes to productivity, sustainability, building out systems, research. I use Chat GPT a lot.
Oh, me too.
But I would never use it to provide a client a script that Chat GPT wrote.
No.
I'll use it for research with a grain of salt with references, but I won't let it take over the creative process because I feel like there's one thing that humans will always hold dominion over artificial intelligence, and that's going to be creativity. You can tell AI what to do, but that creativity comes from the brain. And that's what I love about like Midjourney, for example. It's like you can design really cool things, but a human has to prompt it to create those things. And so, yeah, it's kind of like, I think we got to be aware of how much information we're passing over to AI, how much we're equipping it, because ultimately that could be used against us. But at the same time, we can use it with care, responsibly, to actually help our clients better.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think for me, we talk about AI a lot, obviously, on this podcast, and I'm a part of a lot of different organizations working in different fronts of this thing. But the long and short is like these tools are going to create quicker means of productivity, right? Like we're going to be able to produce more faster. And in the front end, it's going to be helpful in times like now where people that embrace it are able to use it with integrity and ethics, right? Like then, I could get into the weeds of what that means to me. But at the end of the day, let's say 5-6 years from now, like if you're not using AI, you won't be able to produce the level of stuff you're expected to do to keep up with the marketplace, right? Because when you rewind 50 years to my grandfather's business, and he did like supply and supplied like nuts and bolts and like manufacturing parts for like submarine doors and helicopters and all kinds of shit, right? So, but like it would take him 2 months to do what I do in like 2 days, right? But like he made millions and millions of dollars, and I never got to that space yet, right? So, but like he didn't have internet. But they had phones, like, and you had to dial long distance to call. I mean, so think about like I'm sure I get a shitload done more than he would ever done, but like that's what's expected now, right? Because everyone can get a shitload done. So I think we're gonna see that factor happen with AI. Like you're gonna expect to produce a lot more stuff a lot quicker. But the flip side of that is like in these creative professions, like, my editor who can edit video from scratch without needing any AI tools can get halfway through the journey way faster and then get more done quicker, right? To that productivity, but only because she's a very talented editor and artist, right? Same thing with me. Like when I use some generative stuff within Adobe Photoshop, right? And I have a weekly live art stream where I do like these really cool, like posthumous collaborations with my dad. So I take like all his old art that I kept when he passed away and make new art with it and I just do crazy shit. I'll circle parts and draw and like add a dragon or do this. And then like, it'll look okay, but like not good, not great. And then I'll take that and 4 things and chop them all together and use my skills in Photoshop that I've developed over the past 20 years to make something exponentially faster than I ever could have. So, just throwing Joe Schmo in there, like, well, he can type some things in on Midjourney. He can't make what I can make, not with the level of control and detail and skill, right? So there is something there to the operator as well as, just the tool. So I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you. It's such a good tool to be able to help you do more of what you're doing. Even like testing out an idea, right?
Oh yeah.
Getting generative fill to test out the idea. Like, okay, that looks cool. Now I'm going to actually rebuild that and redraw it and make it look epic. But that whole process, like, it can take you so long to even just have a sample to base yourself off of. And with content, when you start using like repurposing tools like, what are they? Slips off the top of my head. But when you start using repurposing tools that grab a long form and pull out a whole bunch of shorts, it's a good starting point at least because the algorithm is trained to pull out the key pieces of value.
Yep.
So even just having that and then going to your editing software and finding the part where you said a certain thing, that's really helpful. I also use it I transcribe my videos, especially my podcasts.
Oh yeah.
And then I feed it to ChatGPT with a prompt that I have and I say, pull out the most appealing, most attention-grabbing parts of this conversation when it relates to this target audience. And I'm actually able to get timestamps of specific parts of our conversation. And that saves me hours of having to sit through and listen to a conversation I literally just had with someone,
that's huge.
Earlier.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So what I use ChatGPT for right now is I've created different conversational bots for each one of my, so I have a side brand, Clienta Studios, where I do my NFT art with my dad and all that sort of stuff. Then I have Epic Made. Then I have my personal brand, Colorful Carl. And so in Colorful Carl, every time I have a deep conversation with somebody, I record everything with Fathom, which automatically does transcripts. I copy and paste the transcripts in there, ask it to learn about me, my history, my experiences, what motivates me. And I've been doing that with hundreds of conversations and just building up how it learns how I think about specific things, how I talk. And then I like, hey, what are some content ideas of some short form videos I can make? And it analyzes all that. So it's like, there's so many different ways to use these things as like just amazing assistants that have connections to the internet and can think and do anything you ask them to do, within reason in terms of like, content, just understanding things. It's crazy. And it's taken some of the stress of me as like a highly ADD creative entrepreneur, right? Like I don't do some of this more structured planning stuff really well. Like it's really zaps a lot of energy out of me. But when I have a literal machine that can just take inputs from me, if I put enough information into it, it knows what I'm trying to do with my life. It knows what things are my goals and objectives. And then it can create starting points, like you said, where it would take me 2 hours to come up with this plan. Well, it just shot it out in 2 minutes, and now I can review it for 20 minutes and start executing, right? Like it's absolutely mind blowing. And I use it all the time for just helping me with content. And then I think Opus.clip or Opus Pro is the one I use for my shorts.
Opus Clip.
Yeah. So I'll make shorts from this podcast, for instance, and that'll be cool. And I think it's better than no shorts. And like I still wouldn't do it if my editor couldn't handle it. But she can handle it, on her Friday once a week or whatever. So, yeah, I think they're powerful tools. But yeah, it is a little scary. Like, at what point do they just take over everything? At what point is like Google's AI generating images based on what people search and just making a new image based on, people are looking for this? Like we're auto generating shit that people didn't even ask for, but they like as an aggregate they ask for, but not individually, right? Like. They're probably already doing that. I don't know why they wouldn't. So,
yeah, and when you watch films like Terminator or Matrix, these are in a way they're. I learned early on in school that popular culture is as much a reflection, a refeed of. It's like a commentary of what's currently happening in culture.
Yep.
So it's like you can almost see whether it's predictive programming or whatever, but you start to see the tendencies. Like you saw in the Matrix, how AI becomes self-sustainable and starts to take over humanity. You see in the Terminator how AI becomes self-sustainable. You see in Mission Impossible how that happens. Like we got to take some cues from this media that's being resent to us, and just kind of be aware that like, okay, these are great tools to have, but where do we draw the line in terms of how they get used? Because they're all fine and great until somebody out there, and rest assured, or not unrest assured, there's somebody out there that has ill intentions with that as well. So we just got to be aware and protect ourselves, and also just be mindful consumers, really.
Yeah, I mean that's the age old story of humankind. Like we can't have nice things because some people are assholes. Like, it's just, every time we make something nice, like how can we kill more people with this? Like, I want to make more money and kill more human beings with this technology because that's what we should do. All of our technology is just geared around money and war, which is anyways. I'm a little cynical. Don't mind me.
I know.
If I was wrong, though, I'm not, unfortunately. But so I think I'm all over the map right now. I apologize. Ross is usually here to kind of anchor us and like keep us, a little more on subject. But we're having fun, right?
Yeah.
What are some big things like? So you talked earlier about some of your strategies for content creation. What do you think's like the big, like, hey, you're struggling with creating content, you need to do it. Maybe you can't quite afford to hire Sebastian or someone like Sebastian. So like, what is your advice for them to do? Like, how do you get this started? You mentioned that 70-30 rule. I love that. We talked a little bit about using AI to give you some prompts, like, other than just, the Nike, just do it. Like, what are some takeaways there for people?
I think a lot of entrepreneurs overvalue preparation and undervalue taking action, and that's one of the reasons why they get held back from so much. It's like procrastination is stealing your potential. So the approach that I take is eliminate as many friction points from the process. That's what can make it sustainable. If every time you have to film, you have to set up your lights, you got to set up your camera, you got to grab pen and paper and start jotting your notebook, all your ideas. Well, what if you had a system, right? Just get in front of the camera, try out, watch yourself back, but also you can be intentional. What I like to do is on Mondays, I like to ideate, and I just sit down with a cup of coffee, and that's where my best ideas come. And I just write down my thoughts like a journal. And then on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I like to script. So flesh the ideas a little bit more. What do I mean by this? How is this useful to my target audience and the person I'm serving? How can I tie this to this other thing? And then you start to see the bigger picture. And then when it comes to actually recording your content, it becomes less overwhelming and a lot easier because you have intention. And I feel like a lot of the overwhelm, at least I found for myself, a lot of the overwhelm and anxiety that people have in their lives and in content creation is a lack of clarity and a lack of understanding. Because when you're clear, you can be confident. And when you're confident, things become easy. So just finding that confidence, asking yourself who you speak to, which is number one, who is your target audience? And two, eliminating all the barriers that get in the way of everybody that's creating content, right? Once we eliminate those and we know who we're talking to, whether you're over editing or just shooting and posting the content matters a bit less, because it's the content value that surpasses the production value at that point.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, for me, I knew I needed to start making content, and I hadn't done it in forever. And I used to do like modeling and acting from like 14 to like 20, right? So like I really was comfortable behind a camera, but I hadn't done anything really substantial in a while. And I got on the phone with Chris Do like just before he like really like skyrocketed, like you know. And so I'm Zoom chatting with Chris Do, and he's just like, man, just make content. He's like, just do it. Like, you know, shit. Like, we were talking about like growing, and like, because I grow a lot of food and shit in my backyard. I got 1.25 acres. And he's like, look, just pick up your phone and start recording things. You have no idea how much knowledge you have. He's like, and if you want to get strategic with it, look what people are searching and figure out, you know, some search trends and then make content around that. He's like, but you know, the big thing I took away from it is just talk about things you know, right? Like, just start with that. And I was making backyard growing content, which has nothing to do with my business or anything, but it just got me comfortable talking in front of a camera. And the first couple videos I shot were so bad, like, and they always are, right? Like, every content creator you ever talk to, like, if you go back and look at their first stuff, they hate it. You're probably not going to think it's great. Like, no one loved it, but you have to not be afraid to suck at first, right? You got to check your ego and just go, hey, look, I'm going on this journey. Like, maybe the first thing you make is like, hey, I'm terrible at making videos, so I'm going to make a video about how I'm terrible at making videos. Just get the rust knocked off and just get it moving, you know? But I do think that confidence and clarity make the huge thing, right? So those were the things I had confidence and clarity on right there. Like, I wanted to help people know how easy it was to just grow food in your backyard. If you have grass and sunshine, like, you could be growing your favorite thing to eat. Most likely there's at least, you know, out of the 10 things you eat that are maybe not processed bullshit. Like, again, I could go on a diatribe about that. But like, you could grow something in your backyard, take a little pressure off the system, have something organic. It's basically free because literally you just make sure it doesn't die, which is not hard if you don't stress out about it. So anyways, I started with that content and then started pivoting more to like, well, I got some business advice too. And I was like, then I made some business advice content. Then actually, you know, I'm talking about art and creativity. And then next thing you know, I'm doing a live stream once a week. It's like, but it started with just like, well, let's talk about these green beans I'm growing here. Like, I know how to talk about that, right? Because the process of getting behind a camera, even for me with that experience already of having been an actor a little, I mean, I was never like, you know, I got an IMDb page, but like, you know, it's no big deal. But yeah, I got like 6 little credits on. They're all like little docudrama, like improv acting. Like, hey, this is the things that are going on, but it doesn't have like exact scripted lines. Anyways, but yeah, once I just got comfortable not caring about it, just going with it, then it worked for me. And now I can just, when I have a thought when I'm driving or when I'm going for a run, like, oh, I just pick up my camera and start recording and let my assistant, like, it goes straight to a thing and my assistant has access to it and she literally can grab it and cut it into some content. And like, I don't even have to think about it. Like, I don't even talk about it. Like, I don't want to look at it because I'll pick it to death and go, oh, well, I needed to say this and I stumbled there and that was weird. She just like post it. And it, like you said, if it's 70% of the way there, it's doing what I needed it to do. Do I need to sit down and be in this perfect little room? Like, no. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's well said. And I think it's also important, like you mentioned, how you grew and pivoted throughout time. It's important for us not to get so fixated on, my page is only about this and it can't be about anything else. But no, like personalities evolve. We evolve as humans, and it's natural for our content to evolve too. We may hate and cringe our first pieces of content, but we highly appreciate those pieces of content when we watch them back, because we know that was the root, that was the beginning of our long journey. And some of the most successful, biggest YouTubers out there are the ones where you can go back to their first video 10, 15 years ago and see how they started.
Yep.
Because their audience is massive now because they've built such a long-term relationship with them throughout that time that it becomes like, if it wasn't for those first shitty videos, you wouldn't have the millions and millions of views today. So that's kind of like the journey that we all have to go on in our own ways with our own content and our own style. It's a long game, but ultimately we're building equity using our personal brand.
yeah, and it's like you said, all these different pieces no one's one dimensional. No one just does this thing. So be authentic, create a bunch of content. Like if you have goals to sell more real estate, like, yeah, maybe like 50% of your content should be about real estate, but maybe even 60%, but there should be a good chunk of just you, the human being. Like, what do you like to do? Like, what's your thing?
Yeah.
Like, the stuff that feels really forced is the one where it's like always selling you something all the time. And it's always like right on the nose. Like, it's like, just take a breather. I don't even want to follow that content. Like, it's exhausting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, we take the approach of growth, nurture, and sales split for content. So roughly 33% of the content is growth, nurture, and sales based. The growth content is the content that overarches with our personal interests and hobbies. And that tends to work really well. So like if you like video games or you like golfing or traveling, sharing, like a third of your content out there about those topics, those could be the topics that connect you with the next person wanting to sell their home.
Yep.
Or with the next, I was talking to a realtor a couple of weeks ago that said, I like to snowboard and longboard and skate. He's like, I actually had somebody come to me as a prospect because they thought I was cool because I do that, because they also like to skateboard.
Yeah.
And I was like, there you go. So like sharing content of you skating, it's completely unrelated to like real estate in this case, but for, one or two pieces of content a week that you do, the rest are all educational, real estate focused. That's the content that connects you with your audience, right? I say, there's this quote that comes to mind. It's like, the target is not the market. So like the content you create is for a specific audience, but it actually touches base with so many overarching interests across other people. And that's how other people can also partake and follow you and be a part of your life, even though they're not looking to buy or sell a home or, create content on Photoshop or play video games or whatever the core interest is that you're driving.
Yeah. It's because none of us are one-dimensional human beings, right? Like, we don't do one thing. So you never know where those networks are going to overlap and introduce. And like, you might watch this because you like the random skating content, and then your buddy needs to sell a house. Like, hey, I got to watch this guy. He's super dope, and he's also a real estate agent, and he's a badass skater. You should, like, you never know how those things connect. So I love that.
Yeah, exactly. So we use that in social media. We call it, and you've probably heard this before, but your unfair advantage. And that's usually with our coaching clients, that's one of the things that I really try and lean on, because most people, they get this imposter syndrome of like, oh, like I'm new, or I haven't been on social media before. And it's like, okay, let's lean on what you're really good at, and let's find the connecting points with what you're doing now, because that's your unfair advantage. Like once you start seeing yourself as unique, you're just a one of one.
Yep.
In a niche, right? You just need to accept what you're good at, what you suck at, and be transparent with it. And you're actually not going to be like everybody else, which is a good thing.
100%. Totally agree with that. And I've seen that be very successful myself. So,
yeah.
Well, awesome, Sebastian. Well, we're coming up on time here, man. I really, this has been a lot of fun. So our last question I have for you before we wrap is there anyone or anything in your career you'd like to shout out to the audience, maybe a mentor, valuable resource, favorite client, something along those lines?
Yeah. So for all the entrepreneurs out there, I got a couple actually, but
Okay.
another one just came to mind.
Love it.
For all the entrepreneurs out there building a business, if you're early on, check out Alex Hormozi's $100 million offers. It's a great book that's going to really get you to think about your customers' perspective and offer the most value possible. It's going to make you a 1 out of 1 business versus competing with everybody else. That's a huge one. Another one, check out Myron Golden on YouTube. Great resource for the mind and spirit, business focused. Some really great principles he talks about and perspectives that will help you grow as a person and as an entrepreneur.
Cool.
Yeah, 2 great resources that I am highly hooked on right now that I would recommend.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Want to give a big shout out to Julien Pierre Benglaguer. My French is awful, but Julien was a previous guest we had in the podcast, and he introduced us to Sebastian. So thanks so much.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, man. Well, we've been talking with Sebastian Lopez, who is the co-founder of Awake Abroad Media. You can check out their website at awakeabroadmedia.com. But if listeners want to follow up with you directly, where should they go?
Instagram, I'd say, is your go-to. If you follow us at Awake Abroad Media, you can shoot us a DM. We'll personally answer. We'll be happy to connect with you.
Love it. All right, Sebastian, thanks so much for being on the show, and we'll see you next time, friends.
Thanks, Carl.
We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.